The budget was you can hire the trainee or you can buy this really good AI tool. And they went with the tool. It feels quite brutal.
We can't afford to take risks if you're dealing with the whole of society.
Do you think that lawyers who think they won't be replaced are naive?
One of our red lines is keeping that human in the loop, but there is no human in there at all.
I do think there's going to be a huge shift in the profession.
Where's that skill set going to be in the future?
First of all, justify that it can't be done via tooling.
If you put your head in the sand, you will get found out.
In this episode, I'm talking with Peter Boyce, one of the legal deputy directors in the civil service and AI lead for his agency. I'm also talking with Amy Cronin, senior director of legal at Skyscanner. If you want to see how top leaders are balancing opportunity and accountability in AI, this episode is a masterclass in thinking ahead. Peter mentioned that there's so many tools out there. It's like everybody's just kind of bombarded with and overwhelmed with the amount of tools out there. How do you actually go about choosing which tools to use, Amy?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really difficult one because, I think anyone in the legal world, you're getting messages constantly and you're doing a lot of demonstrations. So I think a few years ago, we were looking at kind of contract management tools, and that was, where everybody was interested in selling a product. Then they all started adding AI in. So, looking at the AI capabilities. But and it got quite confusing because you're spending a lot of time doing these demos and kind of not really understanding kind of which was better than the other. So we adopted a bit of a framework. So we looked at what's the problem we need to solve. So working with my team, what are the kind of the key areas where we have a problem that potentially could be solved by technology, and focusing on, say, the top 3 things, then going out to market, looking at tools, also getting people in the business to help us, kind of our enablement team helping us with that, doing the evaluations and a comparison between the tools, and then doing a negotiation on cost. So looking across, does it solve the problem, and is it something that, that's value for money essentially? And that's how we've landed at the couple of tools that we're using at the moment.
What about you, Peter?
Yeah, I was going to say actually kind of something fairly similar. There's some sort of standard tools which are sort of being rolled out across different parts of the civil service, and so there is very much a incentive for individual teams, for individuals to explore, play with those, to see actually are there some agents that actually you can create yourself. There's very much kind of that sort of entrepreneurial sort of aspect, because we want people to be able to, quite often the experts in the work that actually what are going to be the tools that are really going to assist. And actually it's nice starting from the ground level. And I don't know whether a few years ago kind of remember there was a kind of a big play for people to go out and be experts in coding. There was loads of sort of coding courses. I remember kind of in those dark days in COVID, and I thought maybe I should kind of do a COVID course while everyone else was going off learning Spanish and Italian and everything. Whereas actually now you really don't need to be a coder to be able to create agents. There was a really good quote from someone recently where they said actually the current state of AI, it's actually democratizes digital development, because actually it's becoming so user friendly now. It's understanding your own work and then seeing actually how it could apply, rather than being a real techie. So actually there's a good incentive to be able to use the tools that we've got already. That doesn't mean that actually if there's good tools out there in the market, particularly kind of maybe around some litigation, we would look at it. And one of the really good things again with civil service is that we speak to each other lots. It's a very large overall organization where actually we can get best practice. We can see what's working well in other areas. So kind of I'm to be speaking with another government department next week, and we're just going to kind of just share where we're at with the tools that we're using, the agents, the ideas we've got. And so there's lots of cross-pollination like that. So I think that it's a moving feast all the time. Obviously, if you listen to all the noise around Anthropic, everyone would just go and just sign up with them. So it's just, and obviously you get people then going, right, well, look, this can do all of this stuff for you. But we've got some very sort of clear governance. We've got some very clear principles, which we will apply. And so it's not something that you make a rush decision in using a particular tool. I wouldn't necessarily even say cautious. I would just say kind of it's responsible. But it may look cautious compared with sort of the private sector.
Yeah, I even think through the process of doing the evaluation, that by the end of it, they'll have released the provider will have released something new in the tool. So it essentially changes. Yeah. I think it's so rapid. And there's quite a lot of pressure to kind of adapt quickly, but I don't think that's necessarily the best approach. I think sometimes a bit of a wait and see approach can be helpful because of this rapid evolution. And I think it's interesting, Peter, you're talking about the kind of the entrepreneurial approach as well.
Yeah.
people building their own agents. So we're kind of in a similar position where we've purchased a lot of tools, not necessarily for the legal team, just for the business, because we're engineer heavy. Training is available, and then you can just crack on and use all of these tools and technology and MCP connectors to just map out something in your own team and workflow and build something. So we're kind of slightly left to your own devices, but empowered to use all these amazing tools to build something new from the ground up, which is quite exciting.
Each week, I take what I'm hearing in conversations with legal leaders. I analyse the market and track emerging trends in this AI era. In my newsletter called The Future Lawyer, Market Intel for the AI Era, I'm focused on what AI is exposing, the opportunities, the blind spots, and the shifts shaping the next 5 years. This is how you see the chessboard before everyone else does. I think it is exciting, but it's also kind of overwhelming, because I heard one of the big legal tech founders say that law firms and in-house teams aren't loyal to any tech company because there's always new innovations, and they could change their mind and be like, actually, this tool seems better than the one that I'm currently using. How do you actually balance, I guess, innovation, but also figuring out, should I be using a better tool? Like, how do you keep up with the trends?
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking it's quite difficult because obviously you have a day job as well, and then you're trying to keep on top of all of these changes. So, there are there's a kind of conferences that are quite helpful, so you can go and you can meet the vendors. I have a network of people as well that kind of discuss these tools, so you kind of can keep up to date, and we chat with each other about what people have tried, etc. So I think there is, you can keep up to date, but actually feeling like you're on top of it, I think, is quite difficult, because you only really learn when you're actually playing with the tool, when you've got it. So I'm trying to get my hands, I was saying to Peter, we have our governance process, trying to get my hands on the new Claude legal plugin, just so I can play with it. And then when people inevitably ask me, which they are already asking me, how is it? Is this going to be amazing for the legal team, that I can have an opinion on it? But you can't do that until you've actually used it.
Absolutely. It's very much, it's intuitive. It's not theoretical, is it at all? And I think having that sort of community, people that you can speak to, have honest conversations. You do have a day job as well, so you do need to be able to kind of balance all of that. But obviously, of course, you want the latest product, you want the thing that's going to have the most impact. But also, we've seen obviously lots of stories, and you will have seen those as well, of lots of legal teams who run pilots that stall because the goals are unclear. It's low adoption. There's not many use cases. There's no clear path to roll out. It might deliver interesting results, but not actually enough to in terms of confidence to be able to reach a decision to roll it out. So I think you have to be careful. And I think what we are looking at is just that a small number of use cases which may have the biggest impact, not get locked into lots of long contracts, but ones which are going to be really safe and meet our really sort of high standards in terms of governance. That's obviously crucial, because in a public service, if you look at sort of trust, and transparency, those things are really, really vital, and we can't afford to take risks. It's not like you're dealing with one client, you're dealing with the whole of society. So you've got to be very careful at how you choose to proceed, which is why that responsibility and a lot of those of governance levels, that's really kind of behind that. We want to make sure we get it right, and we make sure that actually it's value for money, it's sustainable. And it's going to have kind of a real impact for us to be able to kind of deliver those services, which is what we're here to do.
What is quite exciting, though, I think, with all these new tools, and there are so many of them popping up, is that you can actually have quite an outsized influence if you get on board early with the tool and you're kind of one of the earlier clients. You can have quite an impact on their roadmap, because you're talking to them about your needs, your pain points, etc., and they might actively build that into their roadmap, or build something not bespoke for you, but something that is kind of tailored to your needs. And we found that with one of the tools we've kind of got involved with quite early doors, we had a really collaborative relationship. They really got to understand our business and kind of helped us use the tool really specifically for our own kind of business goals. And that was a really helpful experience. And I think in terms of that stickiness point that you raised, that the loyalty, if you are building those relationships with a tool and they are kind of almost building for you, that's probably where the stickiness is, and where the longevity comes in that relationship.
I went to a seminar last week and saw the demonstration from the co-founder of Garfield, and it is completely mind-blowing what they've been able to do. You see it live and you think, wow, because one of our kind of red lines really at the moment is keeping that human in the loop. But there is no human in there at all. I mean, the only human that is there is the client who's checking that actually the figures which have been produced in the letter of claim or the particular claim are correct. I'm not aware, and I'm pretty sure that's what he said, that there was no sort of up to the door of court, there is no human involved. It's obviously a very clever bot who's producing these pleadings, producing the bundles. It is really, there was a wow moment, as there must be with every single one of those demonstrations. But I don't think that would be for us right now, because we really kind of want to keep that human element. But it shows you what AI is capable of, and obviously I think they're doing very well, and very, very clever people who managed to pull this off. It shows you the power of the technology at the moment, which obviously keeps getting better and better. Again, someone said at that seminar that actually AI is as bad as it's going to be right now, because tomorrow it's going to be even better, and then the day after that it's going to be even better, and it's just the potential is obviously is huge. But I think there's also a responsibility angle here on the legal profession to make sure that actually kind of the sustainability of the legal profession, those tasks which we might just write off as automation, sort of the disclosure, some of the early prep work in a litigation case, those are the things that we learnt as paralegals, as trainees. So kind of where's that skill set going to be in the future? And obviously kind of there's lots of great things that lawyers will always add, the grounds of critical thinking, the soft skills, the strategy, the advocacy, unless there's going to be robots in some of the courtrooms. There are those aspects, but actually there's so much of this, the strategy is built in those early stages, the things which you kind of really get very used to doing, and you realize actually you're building a lot of skills, a lot of experience through doing that. So that's the kind of bit of a question mark for me in the future, as to kind of if those tasks are automated, is that going to lead to a bit of a gap in a few years, particularly if those skills aren't being taught or learnt on the job anymore.
What do you think about that, Amy? Do you think that there might be a gap in the future?
I think I do agree with Peter. It's the critical thinking, I think, is going to become a key skill in the age of AI. And I think if you are missing out on those core early tasks, there's a potential of not understanding kind of how you're analyzing the outputs. There's something fundamental missing there. I mean, presumably they'll invent some AI that will do that task, but I feel like there is a core skill set of kind of going through the ranks, that junior level of work, that is the high volume work, that is the boring work. But if somebody isn't doing that, where are they learning those skills? And I think that is quite concerning for the profession, actually. There will be fewer of those jobs. I think there will be fewer trainee jobs potentially, or fewer paralegal jobs. And then there will be that skills gap later on in the kind of mid profession potentially.
I do agree. I think the role is changing so much. I just want to go back to what you mentioned, Amy, about taking a look at the new Anthropic plugin. Let's say a new tool comes in like this one, and you're thinking, okay, how is this going to be relevant potentially to our team? How is it going to help our processes? What sort of process do you go through in your mind or through a framework to establish the risk level and whether you can actually use this tool internally?
Yeah, so we actually, as part of our kind of drive for responsible AI, we've kind of created a framework for the company as a whole in terms of trying to balance that kind of the need for speed and adoption against needing to be responsible and that level of caution. So we have a responsible AI policy and we have various governance frameworks in place. But then what we wanted to do was to come up with something to allow the business to experiment. So, to get their hands on a tool, learn really quickly whether or not it was going to work for them, and then either proceed down the full governance route or kind of just, not proceed at all. So there's a very light touch in terms of signing up to something short term, not putting personal data into it or confidential data, and having a kind of a light touch security process. So it's, making sure that people understand, yeah, you can use this and you can experiment with it, but, it's not an enterprise version of the tool. So, don't put anything in there because it's going to be training the model. Be really careful about how you're deploying it within our business, and also don't build anything permanent with it. Because if you're building something permanent with it, you might not be using it past a month or 2 months, and then you're going to have to unwind everything that you've done. So it's just getting the business on board with that light touch process and giving them that freedom to experiment. So that would be how I would be looking at Claude. I wouldn't be putting, employment contracts through it, for example. So I'd be looking at something non-confidential, no personal data that I could just play around, some policies or something that doesn't have anything identifying in it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Kind of like a risk-based approach, like go step by step, just see how it goes and then assess.
Exactly, because we were holding people back, the full-blown, data privacy, security, AI Act, governance, etc. When people really just wanted to, there's a cool new tool that came out, they want to play around with it for a couple of weeks, and then they put their business case forward. It was just holding people back. So we needed to kind of adapt to that and come up with a process as a trial. But it seems to be working quite well. And then people funnel everything through the more rigorous governance if they want to go into an enterprise agreement.
That's super interesting, actually. What about you, Peter? Is it a similar approach? I guess it's, yeah.
Yeah, very similar, which is reassuring because I think quite often where there's pressures to either meet demand or to reduce costs, that actually just sometimes I can see some organizations might want to take some shortcuts, particularly if you kind of get a very good sales pitch and they go, right, this will do all this stuff for you. And then you then realize, and obviously then you don't want to be sort of backtracking. But I think, yeah, having a good governance structure with everything from making sure sort of committees who are reviewing it against consistently against the same sort of frameworks, making sure there's executive buy-in as well, so it doesn't kind of sit with your tech department or with your necessary kind of lower level lawyers potentially. Kind of you do need that exec buy-in. Make sure you've got your privacy notices there. Kind of you're sorted on retention periods. Making sure that you build in that you do the testing to make sure you get to a really kind of good confidence level before you do anything else. Making sure you're using the sort of anonymized data, taking all necessary precautions at those early stages, because the consequences are not good enough. You want to make sure that you are fully compliant with all data protection legislation as well. So there's a lot involved, and I think that you've got to be careful that you don't completely overload that governance process as well, because there are finite resources in every organization. So you don't want to be absolutely swamped with all of these different business cases or all these different data protection impact assessments, because that's going to lead to kind of everything being slowed down, and you might have some really good ones in there which just get lost in amongst all this. So it's trying to be sensible and proportionate with this, and then hopefully you'll end up with something which actually is going to be impactful, but also it's going to be safe.
Yeah, and there's a big education piece as well, I think, of getting people to understand, when a tool is free, it's free because they're using your data essentially to train the model. What's confidential data, when you shouldn't be kind of plugging in some, I don't know, note-taking app into company Zooms, where there's a confidential meeting happening. I think in the early days, there was quite a heavy lift in that education piece, people understanding particularly IP infringements, etc. But now there's been a bit of maturity. I think most people do understand that. So it's a bit easier to kind of move them into that framework, that responsible AI process, without too much pushback.
Yeah, and I think there's also a bit of grey areas to liability. So not actually recognizing that actually, yes, if something goes wrong, it's not somebody else's fault. Actually, if you're the organization who's deploying it, you are liable for it. And particularly kind of liability is a very well-known concept in the world of legal, but it can't just be sort of delegated. And that's why they've seen those high-profile cases quite often roll on Friday, talking about those cases which have just turned out to be fake, which have been generated by AI, and nobody thought to check them. It's kind of, it doesn't absolve you of those responsibilities. So again, it's a really part of the education piece, as you said, Amy.
How do you think your roles are going to change with AI over the next, let's say, 5 years?
I know, almost at the moment with the pace of change, 5 years, thinks, oh my god, what's the world going to be like then? I think this year for us is going to be quite a big year, because it's the first year where actually we're really properly getting to grips and with really impactful piloting and making decisions on what our strategy is going to be. That links into budgets, it links into strategy for what the organization will look like, what the teams are going to look like, how we're going to supervise people, looking at the demand levels. So I think there is going to be very much an expectation. This is as it gathers pace more and more, that AI becomes more and more central to our work. Yeah, that there's a technical aspect. We need to kind of be more and more comfortable with using a variety of tools, and that may well be self-taught. It may be through actually you dedicating some time every week, or chunking up your time to make sure that you are fully up to date, that you are leading, and that people realize that actually your teams have got confidence in you, that you are innovating and supporting them trying out those tools as well. But I think it's looking at your life as a lawyer in a completely different way, and just sort of focusing on those skills which AI may never really kind of get to grips with. Maybe kind of there's, looking at my teams, there's going to be maybe more advocacy, because that's an area which actually AI can't do at the moment. Looking at strategy whilst understanding the workflows more as well. So actually you are developing, you're leading teams, but in a different way. And, we're all used to adapting. We obviously all had to adapt through COVID, and, those technological advancements that we thought, wow, God, you're going to be on remote working all the time. You're going to do virtual hearings. God, we thought that was wow. Whereas actually this is going to be a whole new wow over the next few years, things that we hadn't really ever thought was ever going to be possible. I think it's going to be, you need to be basically very open-minded for the challenges that are coming up. that. But I think they're exciting as well, because nobody wants to be doing the same thing every day for the rest of their career. So it's really learning how to adapt, but not to get too caught up in continual change, because actually lawyers do also like to be a bit grounded as well. If you have endless change, then it's not always in our DNA to be full of that amount of change. So we need to kind of manage that change responsibly.
Yeah, I think I would broadly agree. I think there is not going to be an option to be kind of a technology adopted lawyer. I mean, it's going to be it'll be a basic of the job that you'll be familiar with these tools and that you'll be able to operate them. And also that you'll understand the fundamentals of like how LLMs operate, how AI works, the more kind of technical fundamentals of it. I think we'll all have to really upskill on that, so that we can have those proper conversations with vendors, that we know what we're buying, that we're able to build stuff, because we will be given the tools to build. I mean, we have the tools to almost build these things ourselves. So we'll be really leaning into that and carving that time out, I think. And hopefully, we will get more time, because we'll be able to do, outsource a lot of the kind of boring day-to-day stuff to AI. So we've actually implemented that in our team. We've given everybody kind of a couple of hours every week that's blocked out of diaries, and that everyone is allowed to and expected to, during that time, to spend time researching, reading, trying new tools, and that's kind of sacred time. And then we share with each other. We have sessions where we kind of share some kind of tips with each other of what we've learned, or get people in from the business to train us up on something interesting that we've heard about. So I think that's it. That's going to be a big area. I think recruiting is going to look really different. What our teams look like. There's not going to be this constant, okay, I have a need, I'm going to hire a new person. I think it's going to be, I have a need. First of all, justify that it can't be done via tooling. And as we talked about, the lawyers coming through the system, the junior lawyers are going to look very different. I think we're going to be hiring for that more technical skill set, kind of prompt engineers, legal engineers, rather than trainee solicitors. So I think it is going to, the shape of things are going to look quite different in the next, I would say, 2 to 3 years, not 5.
Yeah. It's wildly different, isn't it? It's quite it's quite, when you actually kind of set it out like that. But that is, I think that's going to be the reality. And obviously the pace may be very different as well, kind of beyond that in private practice as well. I've heard several law firms taking on lawyers, but with the full intention to probably get rid of them in a couple of years once they've used them to train up AI. Do you think, oh my God, that sounds awful? Yeah. How upfront are they being about that?
It's quite brutal. And I was speaking with a lawyer, a partner in a private practice firm recently. We were talking on this topic on a panel about AI. And what she said was that she had a trainee, a really, really, really good trainee. And they're a small firm, and they were coming to qualification, and the budget was, you can hire the trainee or you can buy this really good AI tool that will do her job and multiple other people's jobs. And they went with the tool. So that's a really good lawyer that doesn't get a job on qualification, which feels really sad to me, but it's kind of feels like it's the harsh reality that we're facing into.
That's so crazy, but it makes sense. And I'm not surprised, but at the same time, it's surprising, Yeah.
It feels quite brutal. And to that end, I wonder, there will be a backlash at some point, I guess. We're now in the like AI is amazing phase, but I presume at some point there will be some kind of backlash, whether it's from an environmental perspective or, I don't know, societal perspective. There will be a backlash at some point. I don't know if legal tools will be the focus of the backlash, but I think there will be a broader kind of shift. I think, it's a cycle. So it will be interesting to see, when and how that happens.
Yeah, I saw a study actually which said that a company had cut, I don't know, a massive percentage of their employees to replace with AI, but then later regretted it. I don't know the reason why they regretted it or the details, but that was kind of like a statistic. And yeah, I do wonder if that might be the case. I don't know why it would be the case, but obviously, like you've mentioned, Peter, you have like you want this human in the loop. You want to have humans there. What's your reasoning behind that as an organization culture?
I think, probably for different reasons, but in terms of just you just think of the client-lawyer relationship. I think clients want more than probably what AI can offer at the moment. And it's not advanced enough. And as I said, I may be eating my words in a few years' time. But I think at the moment, as I said, there's all those other skills which experienced lawyers can offer and should offer on cases. Is the collaboration is really, really important. So the strategy is really important. Depends kind of what type of law as well. So litigation is very much, is still very much people focused, those core soft skills focused. But yeah, I think that if you've got some very good lawyers at the moment, I think you would be crazy to replace them too early. You have to kind of be measured about it. To take all the advantages of AI at the moment and used in the right way, it can be a real superpower to lawyers if you're using it in the right way. I think at the moment, liability, kind of complex cases, that's why it works really well, I think, with Garfield's at the moment, because it's low value. And by their own admission, definition, kind of low value, low complexity, small claims court. All of those factors mean actually this is, if you get the tech right, it's absolutely brilliant. And obviously for loads of clients, they're getting really good outcomes, very cost effective, but it's a big leap from that to some of the other stuff at the moment. So kind of, I just don't know where it will end up. But kind of right now, I think that it would be dangerous to go down that route with so many talented lawyers out there, and particularly kind of in the public sector, where people and empathy and understanding of those who you serve is really crucial. It's a crucial aspect to public service.
I also think there's probably some kind of things that will be tested in the future, like legal professional privilege. How does that interact with AI when you're funneling all your confidential documents into a locked down AI system? I don't think that's a huge amount of thought has been given to that. It hasn't been any test case. So I think there's some kind of fundamental points around that client lawyer relationship, as you mentioned, Peter, that will come out over the next few years. There'll be test cases where that's looked at. And I think that will be quite interesting when you're looking at that AI kind of perspective.
I was actually speaking to a lawyer today who said to me, she wouldn't say this kind of publicly because it's, or to be too negative, but she was saying that, with all these tools and the advancements with AI, especially when you know what's going on with in terms of like behind the scenes of what they're building, she said, so many lawyers are going to be replaced. And, your example, Amy, from the trainee who was literally replaced by AI or technology, is crazy. Do you think that lawyers who think that they won't be replaced in the future potentially are naive?
Yeah, I mean, I do think there's going to be a huge shift in the profession, but I don't think we can really realize what that is yet. I think it's going to be so huge. So I don't know what it's, what the numbers are like going through law schools now and into law firms. But I would have thought over the years that people would be probably well placed to maybe look at other professions, or that there might become a new profession, which is like legal technology executive or legal technology lawyer, that there'll be a new kind of part of the profession that is created, and that there's a new stream of trainees, there's courses, that's probably something that they'll start teaching as part of the SQE. And it'd be interesting to see how quickly that happens, actually.
Yeah, and I think there's been a number of roles just even the last 2 or 3 years, ones which we would never have recognised a few years ago. That is a real shift. Law firms is mainly law firms, I think, who have recruiting a particular set of skills. I guess probably the numbers of people doing that are actually relatively small at the moment. What is the pool? But I think the pool will get bigger because those people are going to be in demand, and maybe people just hop around actually quite a lot. So there's not going to be loyalty with it. It's just who pays the biggest buck for it, because those people are going to be really high in demand. But I think it's there's a very loud narrative about replacing, and I always just think is that narrative from legal tech companies, or is it the reality as well? I mean, you go to conferences like Legal Geek, and you're surrounded by these legal tech providers who are doing amazing things, but it's a very crowded marketplace. But it feeds into the narrative that actually, yes, of course, AI will replace, but I still think actually replace, where we're talking about replacing, I think that supporting at the moment is where I hope that it ends up, as in it can be your super assistant. So it might be actually, those trainees that you had, those really good paralegals, even the junior lawyers that you had, those AI can really be that assistant if you get on board with where the future is going. I think if you completely put your head in the sand and go, look, this is just not going to change anything that I do, I think you will get found out. I think you will need to skill up, have a different mindset, and be prepared for the change that's coming. And I think if you are all those things, you can thrive. I really do think so. But I think on the opposite is true as well. And but I don't think anyone knows definitely which way it's going to go. It's may get too late, and then it's going to be difficult to be able to row back. But I hope we don't get to that stage. But we just have to be open about that. This is what's going to come. But it may actually also be quite positive as well for quite a group of our lawyers.
And I do think it's the first time, or probably one of the first times, that lawyers have been front and fore of a technological revolution. Like a lot of the AI, so it's focused on legal tech. We are the main characters here, which I don't think has ever really happened before. So when you go to conferences like Legal Geek, it's quite amazing the number of vendors that there are and what they're doing, and how exciting it is. As lawyers who may not be natural bedfellows with the technology, I think it is exciting. It's great that we can lean into this. These tools are available, and I think if they're used in the right way, as you said, they can support or augment what we're doing rather than replace us. They'll replace the boring work, and there might be a few paralegal jobs that don't exist anymore, some trainee jobs that don't exist, but I don't think it's going to get rid of the entire legal profession. Or they can come back to me in 10 years and see.
We'll put a calendar invite in for 10 years' time, Holly.
Absolutely.